Is it time to get over slavery? Medium article calls me out for male toxicity. A conversation with the amazing atheist. Who gives a shit about the amazing atheist? Sargon of Akkad spouts hate facts. The Quartering fumes over Resident Evil 3 remake skirt change. This is toilet tier content for people seriously lacking in brain cells. If Vaush is a real advocate for workers, a real socialist, then why does 90% of his content have to do with stupid identity politics? Hello everyone, I hope you all had a happy Easter. Today I've got 3 stories for you. The first one is that Vaush has posted a half an hour long outrage video over a made up robot orgasm. The second topic I'm going to cover is that despite the fact that her congressional district is among the hardest hit in the nation when it comes to coronavirus deaths, AOC still has time to host an episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. Finally, I'm going to talk about how some criminals are using the coronavirus to get away with crimes. So let's start out with Vaush. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with me and my YouTube channel, I tend to describe my political leanings as being a post-liberal conservative. To avoid getting overly philosophical, let's just say that I tend to be pretty socially conservative, while economically, I tend to be much more left-leaning. Now, I wouldn't consider myself to be a socialist, and I don't like welfare entitlement programs that trap people in poverty. That being said, it's an absolute tragedy how the American worker is treated in this country. It's like they're 2 degrees separated from chattel slavery. What happened to all of the labor unions? What happened to all of the people that used to advocate on behalf of workers? What happened to the left wing? You look at the sort of people leading the left today, and it's nothing but a bunch of neoliberal shills. Neoliberalism is the consensus political viewpoint of the managerial class in the United States and Western Europe. It's a political consensus that believes that there's only 3 valid political positions that someone can take. This trinity of acceptable political positions includes only the following 3 things. A. Right-wing libertarian economic policies. B. Globalism, global capitalism, international markets. C. Identity politics based off race and gender and sexual orientation. Any sort of political position that's outside one of those 3 things is unacceptable. When a political proposal is made that might tend to help or boost American workers, it has to be shoehorned in through one of these 3 political positions embraced by the neoliberals. So that's why, for example, when Joe Biden says, when Joe Biden recently proposed the possibility of forgiving student loan debt, he qualified that as only applying to people of color. Now let's turn our attention to the YouTuber Vaush. Vaush is someone who styles himself as being not a neoliberal shill. He's an anarchist or some sort of socialist, or at the very least a progressive. Someone like Vaush, based on the way he describes himself, should be an avowed advocate of working people. Should be the most important thing to him, right? And right now, conditions could not be worse for working people in the United States. We're in the middle of a viral pandemic that our government wasn't prepared for. Millions of Americans lost their job. They have no money coming in. The stimulus is completely bungled. They've got no health insurance. If you're one of the workers that didn't lose your job, well, you're at risk of contracting the coronavirus. And of course, these workers at all these grocery stores, fast food restaurants, etc., they're receiving no sort of hazard pay or anything like that. These are undoubtedly dark times for working people. So how does someone like Vaush respond to something like this? Well, yesterday he posted a half an hour long video where he expressed his outrage over a made up robot orgasm. So a group of people were playing Dungeons and Dragons and broadcasting it over the internet. In the game they were playing, apparently one of the player characters was a robot that needed repairs. Upon soliciting help from a mechanic, according to the dungeon master, the mechanic then inserted something into a neck slot of the robot, which caused the robot to experience an orgasm. The people playing this stupid Dungeons and Dragons game found this to be akin to a sexual assault, and from that point on promptly quit the game. Vaush agrees and finds this conduct to be unacceptable. Now, if you watch the clip from this Dungeons and Dragons game, as is included in Vaush's video, you will see that the dungeon master who's describing this thinks that it's absolutely hilarious. He's laughing as he describes what's happening to this robot character. And you know what? It's not funny. It's not a funny joke at all. Like, nothing about that is amusing. And unsurprisingly, it comes off real cringy. Like anyone would expect any situation where someone finds some joke they're telling to be hilarious and no one listening to it thinks it's remotely funny at all. But it would be a mistake to attribute the cringiness of that situation towards the fact that what the dungeon master said was somehow deeply offensive. Only the most delicate of snowflakes would be deeply offended or outraged over something like this. It's a made-up fake robot orgasm. But all of that aside this is complete bullshit. But of all the things that Vaush could be talking about to his audience of nearly 70,000 people, he chooses this to do a half an hour video about. While other leftist YouTubers like Jimmy Dore are trying to encourage workers to go on a general strike, Vaush is posting videos about fake robot orgasms. And it's not like this is just a one-time thing. If you look at all of the recent videos Vaush has been posting, it's all on bullshit topics. Is it time to get over slavery? Medium article calls me out for male toxicity. A conversation with the amazing atheist. Who gives a shit about the amazing atheist? Sargon of Akkad spouts hate facts. The quartering fumes over Resident Evil 3 remake skirt change. This is toilet tier content for people seriously lacking in brain cells. If Vaush is a real advocate for workers, a real socialist, then why does 90% of his content have to do with stupid identity politics? That is something I would expect to see from a neoliberal shill, not a real leftist. Now, I'm sure if Vaush were confronted with this, he would just dismiss this criticism by calling the person a Nazi or a fascist. What a complete joke. And that would be pretty much the perfect response from a neoliberal shill. Now, why did Bernie Sanders lose the presidential primary for the Democratic Party? It was probably because most of his supporters, instead of going out and voting for him, were watching stupid Vaush videos about trivial nonsense. Speaking of trivial nonsense, let's get into our second story. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who will hereby be referred to as AOC, you know, the radical congresswoman from New York, the Justice Democrat, the Democratic Socialist. Certainly she is someone who you would expect to be deeply concerned for workers right now. Her congressional district in New York City, from what I understand, is one of the worst, if not the worst hit district in the entire nation. When you see those pictures or videos about the mass graves in New York City, those are largely being filled by people who have died in AOC's congressional district. You would therefore expect AOC to be very concerned about the coronavirus. You would expect it to have 100% of her attention. Her district is in an absolute crisis. Likewise, as a Democratic socialist who endorsed Bernie Sanders, you would expect her to be very concerned about the plight of workers right now. The fact that most Americans still haven't gotten a stimulus check should be something that she's very concerned about. You'd expect her to be at least as concerned as people like Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew Cuomo, who are constantly going on television talking about the virus. But is AOC doing any of these things? Is she reassuring workers? Is she fighting on behalf of her congressional district, which is in a coronavirus crisis? Is she putting a path forward for workers now that Bernie Sanders has lost the presidential primary? No, AOC is doing none of these things. Instead, the other day, she appeared to guest host an episode of RuPaul's Drag Show. That tells you everything you need to know about AOC's priorities. A show about transvestites is more important than fighting on behalf of her congressional district where people are dying in mass of coronavirus. A show where men compete by dressing up as women is more important than fighting for the rights of workers during this time of crisis. Now, like I said about Vaush, these aren't the priorities that I would expect from a genuine left-wing person. They're the priorities I would expect from someone who was a neoliberal shill. If you're a leftist or a socialist or just anyone who cares about working people, stop listening to these people. These people aren't interested in helping workers. They're just interested in making money and exploiting people. AOC isn't interested in helping working people. She's interested in making margaritas in her apartment while she tries to get more Twitter likes. Moving on to the third story I wanted to talk about today, how coronavirus is being used by some criminals to get away with committing crimes. Now, where I live, before they shut down, for the most part, all of the courts, when the coronavirus first started being reported in the news pretty heavily, all of a sudden the rate at which criminals would show up for their court dates plummeted. Suddenly, every person who had to show up for criminal court had caught the coronavirus, or a family member who lives in the same household would catch the coronavirus. It was amazing how well having the coronavirus correlated to people having to show up in court for a court date. And what is the court going to do about it? If someone calls in and says, hey, I'm supposed to come to court today for my burglary case, but I've been coughing all morning. Do you still want me to come in? Of course the court's going to say no. It would be stupid of them not to. Now, some criminals are stupid, but some of them are clever. And they've discovered that the coronavirus can potentially get them out of trouble. You're caught by police burglarizing somebody's car, just start coughing. The police aren't going to want to put you in their squad car, take you and book you into the jail. Not if you potentially have the coronavirus. Now, this doesn't mean you can go ahead and commit any crime you want. I'm sure if you murder someone, they're going to take you in whether you're coughing or not. But you can certainly get away with quite a bit. Now, supposedly what they're doing where I live is that all of the people caught committing crimes who don't end up getting charged because they may have the coronavirus will just have those charges filed later. Whether or not that will actually happen, I don't know. It very well could, but I could also see it not happening. My suggestion is, for the period of time right now, you can't depend on the liberal state to protect yourself or your property. It's now going to be your responsibility. So take all the precautions that you need to take. Don't take your own safety for granted. Anyways, that's all I've got to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe.